Good morning. Thanks for having me. So I'm going to give a little bit of background on waste diversion and recycling in Loveland, just to kind of bring everybody up to pace, and then I'm going into a presentation on a new program we have called Recycle Bank. So just in general, what waste diversion is. I would hope most people in here would know what it is, but it's basically just the diverting of waste from the landfill. So anything we can keep out of the landfill, diverting it away for reuse, recycling, or composting. Those are probably the most well known in this area. So as you can see here, City of Loveland, we offer 3 different bins for waste materials. We've got our recycling cart, which again, when we're talking waste diversion, we do everything single stream. We want everything going into that cart that we can get in there that's recyclable. We also offer a subscription yard waste cart. The city's got about a 41% participation as far as our green waste diversion goes. And then obviously, when we're talking diversion, we want to keep as much stuff out of that gray cart as we can. So we also run a very popular recycling yard in Loveland, and some common materials that we divert down there. And every time I go down there, I'm just amazed by it. I mean, I've been running this for 2 years, and I still am amazed every time I go down there just how much stuff we're keeping out of the landfill. You can see we've got our brush and wood pile, we've got concrete and porcelain, and we actually don't even keep track of how much concrete and porcelain we keep out of the landfill. In this last year, we were able to start quantifying that, but at this point we don't know how much of that we've been keeping out. But it obviously materials like that really add up. We've got our glass, which for the past so many years we've been taking glass from Fort Collins. They contribute to our glass recycling program. We've taken glass from Greeley, we've taken glass from Windsor. We're currently taking glass from the Rio in North Fort Collins and also New Belgium. We don't normally see this many tires, but with the flood that came through, we had someone down on 287 in the river corridor that had been stockpiling a number of tires, and my division was the lucky ones that got to get down in the mud and pick them all up. So right now we're probably sitting on about 300 yards of tires. We do generally take some tires if they come into our recycling yard, but we don't normally have that many. A few more. We've got a really good e-waste program. We take hardbound books, and we also take plastic film, usually in the form of Walmart bags and Safeway grocery, anything like that. You've got your general recyclables that a lot of people are familiar with, as far as cardboard, paper, and plastics. We've got our kiln-dried wood pile, which is separate from our brush pile, and then we also have a bunker that we hold metal and steel that we salvage. So in 2012, as Caroline mentioned a moment ago, we had a diversion rate of 61%. That's material that was collected both curbside and via the drop-off at the recycling yard. I'm pretty proud of that number, but a couple things that, I try to be pretty honest with people. Of that 61%, it looks really good, and it is really good because it is material that's not going to the landfill. But our curbside and our papers and plastics and a lot of those commodities, we're only really seeing about a 26%, and I know some people would love to be at 26%. But the other 70 to 74% of the material diverted is our yard waste and our wood waste and grass and leaves. So it's great that those organic materials aren't going in the landfill, but I would really like to see those commodities go up, substantially from 26, and that's where I'll get into the next portion of my presentation, which is Recycle Bank. So if anybody's not familiar with Recycle Bank, it's a rewards program. It's basically all online, and what it does is Recycle Bank rewards customers for bringing their recyclables to the curb, and also rewards our customers for other green actions. And by other green actions, we basically mean like going on their website and learning about what does happen to glass when it's recycled. should you keep your cap on your bottles, on your plastic bottles? Just there's a lot of different things where you can earn points on their website by just learning about recyclables and just trying to further educate yourself. So again, how it works: you recycle, you earn points, you get rewards. On average, members receive about $150 worth of rewards annually, which again, these sometimes the rewards are going to be very similar to what you might see in a Valpak, but we really try hard to get reward partners that go a little bit above and beyond and maybe offer a reward or a coupon that's different than what you could just get out of your normal newspaper. So you can see that Recycle Bank is in a lot of communities. It's missing one. I noticed there's a dot that's not in Laramie, Wyoming, because I established a Recycle Bank program there too before I left. So I don't think Loveland was on this, but you can see there's some fairly good sized cities that are on here. I think a couple of them have actually dropped off. But anyway, this is kind of a snapshot of the Recycle Bank website, where you can earn points, get rewards, and it's a pretty intuitive website. It's pretty cool. You can check your points, you can manage your account. When you get so many points, you can go on there and buy a reward or a coupon with your points. Another snapshot just about your community and how many up in the top right corner you can see the local recycling scoreboard, how many pounds were recycled at that point in the year. So why did the city want to go with Recycle Bank? Well, we kind of had three different ideas in mind. We had our first three goals were we wanted to finally pay back our customers for a lot of years of doing a very good job with recycling. And with that, by paying them back, give them some points, give them a reason to recycle even more. Second, we don't have a sustainability coordinator in Loveland. Everything that is done as far as sustainability and diversion is done through our solid waste division. So Recycle Bank does have a pretty good handle on education, and their website is, like I said, is very educational, very intuitive. So we thought that could be another way for our public to get more education on recycling. Third was another one of our goals was to get more people into our local businesses. And that's where I'll get into the next part of my presentation is we really wanted to get some local businesses, some homegrown mom and pop sort of places, some of our local breweries to participate in the Recycle Bank program also and give our customers a chance to go to some local places instead of some of the national retailers. So basically, like I said, increase the recycling. The more people are recycling, the more points they get. Give customers a payback and increase the foot traffic into both our local and our national retailers in and around Loveland. So basically, where kind of the last part of my presentation is, when we got into Recycle Bank, they had it's their basic program. Anybody that signs up to be a reward partner has to offer a coupon of some sort, or a reward as they like to call it. They really don't like the word coupon, but it is what it is. And so the basic Recycle Bank program was a lot of times people would give, say, 5 to 10% off of a certain purchase. Well, the city of Loveland was the first city to do this. And what we did is we decided that we were going to up that a little bit, and we worked with Recycle Bank to create our premier partners. And like I said, this was designed by the city of Loveland, and what it was meant to do was we really wanted people getting into our local businesses. You know, we love the fact that Dick's Sporting Goods and maybe Target, Walmart, some of those big box stores are on there. It does give people some different variety. But what we really wanted to see was people getting into our local breweries, our local restaurants, our local mechanics shops, anything like that. So that's where we designed the Premier Partners partnership. So basically what we said is we went to some of our local places, and we said, we really want you guys to be a part of this. But what we need you to do is we need you guys to give a reward that's $10 or more in value. And you know, when you're talking to a small business, they kind of say, wow, that's that gets a little bit rich for us. If there's a potential for a lot of people to come through the door, multiply that times $10 each time they give away that coupon, and it gets a little bit steep. So from there, what we said is we, the city, are going to give you free advertising in numerous ways. We're going to do a photo ad in the newspaper, potentially. We'll do a mock-up with your business on there. This one obviously is just kind of my boss's name is Mick, so we used his name as the canine salon, but you could take your dog to a canine salon and get a discount off a dog wash or a groom. And then the next thing is we decided to turn our garbage trucks into Vegas taxi cabs, which was putting advertising on them, which this isn't a new idea. I mean, you see garbage trucks with advertising all the time, but again, we the city, we're paying for all this. We are paying for the graphic design, we're paying for the ads, the hardware that goes on the side of the truck, a photo ad on the city website, Facebook postings, slides on city cable TV channel. I don't have cable TV, I've got Dish, so I don't get to experience this, but anybody that goes through and watches our city council meetings would get to see advertisements from some of our local premier partners. This is not our mayor. Anybody that knows Cecil, this is not him, but a video with our mayor on the TV channel or city website or YouTube, just talking about that premier partner. Rat cards for the business, so they can put them out at their front counter. Just talking about their business and talking about Recycle Bank and what it can do. And so, in the end, we've got this is kind of the grand finale here of everything that we offer to our local businesses. If they would offer up a better than normal reward for the local city customers, and in turn, we said we're going to give you a lot of free advertising. So how's it going? At this point, the jury is still out. We currently have 7 premier partners signed up. We've been doing this since July, and our overall city participation as far as our customers who have signed up for the program is around 24%. That to me seems lackluster, but I've come to find out from the Recycle Bank folks, 30% is actually on the high end of any sort of rewards program like this. So after 4 or 5 months, we feel that we're doing actually pretty well at around 24-25%. Like I said, we have seven partners so far. We've got Cactus Grill, local Mexican restaurant downtown Loveland. Loveland Ale Works, a startup brewery in Loveland. We have got Metric Motors, Next Door Food and Drink, Poorhouse, Rocky Mountain Quick Lube, and Verboten Brewery. We know this program is working because Verboten Brewery called us about a week ago and said, we need to change our reward. We've got too many people utilizing it. And they were giving away a really good one. They were giving away a free growler, and I think it cost people 150 points. Well, when you sign up for Recycle Bank, you get 300 right out the door. So just like that, people had 2 free growlers if they wanted to go down to Verboten Brewery. And Verboten called and they said, we love it. We know this is working, but we're a small brewery. Every drop of beer counts, So that's the beautiful thing with Recycle Bank too, is if a reward gets too popular, they've got some internal governors. They can kind of shut it down as far as they can increase the price. They can go in and switch the reward. And that's what we had to do on Verboten. Like we said, we aren't trying to run anybody out of business with giving them too many freebies, but we want people going into these local places and tasting their beer. And at that point, hopefully they'll come back for more. So that is it. And I think I've met my timeline. Any questions? I think we've got room for 2 questions. Go ahead. It is. It's only for residential customers.
What do you do with your green waste?
We do. We actually work with A1 Organics, and they come on site and they grind it, and then they haul it to one of their locations, usually in Keensburg. They run it through compost. So anyway, I think that's everything. So Oh, one more. I'm sorry. As far as, are you talking about the compost side of it? We have a fairly good screening process at our recycling yard. We don't take any pressure treated. We try to take out as much painted wood or stained wood that we can, and that does go to the landfill. Unfortunately, we did have to turn away some materials from the recycling yard that could have been composted, but it was just they were too compromised with too many other contaminants. So, yeah.
We'll have more time for questions after everybody's. Fort Collins has a slightly different system. We don't run the municipal trash service in Fort Collins. We have a privatized trash collection system. And so when you hear me talking about some of my numbers, it'll be a little different from Tyler. We'll be talking about community-wide, including commerce and industry numbers. But what I guess I would tell you is that we care very deeply about how things are working in Fort Collins, and so although we don't provide the service, the city has taken a fairly assertive role in helping define what the goals are for the community, and then helping reach those goals and make sure people have the kind of recycling opportunities that they really demand, and they have for a long time. We adopted a pay-as-you-throw ordinance in 1995, so here it is almost 20 years later, and the way it works is that if you are a trash hauler in Fort Collins, you have to have a license from the city, and as a condition of that license, you have to provide recycling to folks in single-family households. And you also have to charge trash by volume, and it's the same as Loveland, and so it's an incentive for people to reduce the amount of trash that they generate because it saves a little money in their household budget. We also provide a recycling drop-off center. It's, again, very popular. We've done this now for almost 11 years, and surprisingly, it's like Tyler says, you just are so surprised at how many people love to patronize drop-off sites. We get 400 visits a day at our facility. A new initiative that I'd like to talk about is the Waste Reduction and Recycling Assistance Program. It goes by the acronym WRAP, and this is a new outreach to the business sector in Fort Collins and multifamily, because this is a group that isn't affected by the city's pay-as-you-throw ordinance, but that also, craves the opportunity to recycle. So I think Caroline will probably be talking about that later this afternoon, but it's been a really popular thing in the last couple of years. People are talking to Caroline all the time now about getting their apartment complexes started, figuring out how to get their business started with a recycling program, and she offers some really great assistance, some audits, educational materials, training, that sort of thing. In the next year, we expect to have an expanded recycling drop-off facility available for the public to use that'll accept some of the quote-unquote hard to recycle materials. So in addition to the conventional bottles and cans and newspapers and cardboard, we'll be accepting some of the construction and debris that we see, wood waste. We'll be collecting yard waste. We'll be collecting some of the more heavier durable plastics. And Tyler, you guys collect those. We've got an example here of, those plastic Adirondack chairs, things like that. Kind of, again, hard to collect, but we can find a market for it. And when we get this new drop-off facility established, we will be charging a fee, but it'll be a lower fee than going to the landfill. So we hope that people will be motivated to make that trip and drop off the materials that will then be appropriately recycled. Some of the other measures that the city is able to apply have been the idea of banning certain materials from the waste stream. And in 2007, they banned the disposal of electronics in the waste stream in Fort Collins. And just as a side note, in this last year, the state legislature has passed a similar bill. So it's no longer legal to put any type of electronic in the waste stream here in Colorado. But they decided in March that the same approach might apply for a material of fairly significant value. Cardboard has a great market. It's a steady commodity. A lot of the other recyclables, the market price is go up and down, and it makes it a little harder to make a business proposition out of that. But cardboard has a strong market. It's something people recognize fairly readily, so that they know to separate it out. And so, you know, the council made that choice in March for the entire community, not just the residential community. You can't put cardboard in the trash in Fort Collins anymore. So that's kind of an interesting departure. We think we're the only community in probably about a 5-state region that has tried that. And we have been pleasantly surprised by the level of sort of awareness that folks in Fort Collins have displayed about that. It's like, well, yeah, cardboard, that's recyclable, and sure, just help me understand, make sure I know how to go about doing it. And so you know, this is helpful, I think, for people to understand. It's that wavy, corrugated-looking material. And we get a lot of questions about, well, how am I going to do that, especially in my business place? And so we urge folks to talk to the trash haulers, because they're all in a position to provide a pretty good solution for them about what that recycling sort of program is going to be like for your business. If you've already got recycling, then just keep using it. It's part of what we refer to, Tyler mentioned earlier, single stream recycling, which is pretty much throughout Colorado now is the general approach now in recycling programs. It combines the bottles and cans, it combines the cardboard, it combines the paper, newspaper, office paper. All of those materials, we refer to them as single stream. So cardboard can go in your single stream program. If you're a generator that has a lot of cardboard, and again, talk to your hauler, because you might find that this is actually a fairly important way, not just to reduce your trash bill, because cardboard's pretty bulky and takes up a lot of room in the trash can, but there might be some really helpful ideas that your hauler has about, well, maybe you would even consider baling it, because baled cardboard is even more market ready and fetches a fairly good price. And so I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about a new planning project the City Council has asked us to work on. Here's what happened. In 1999, the council said, oh, the city's goal is going to be to divert half of its waste stream from landfill disposal, and staff dutifully set off to work on that over the past 14 years. And we monitored it, and we tried new programs and initiatives, and we did a lot of education outreach, and lo and behold, we've reached that 50% waste diversion level. And again, this is for the entire community, not just one sector, not just the residential sector. And I have to admit, it's a fairly difficult proposition to get the data, because you have to really work and talk to people individually. How's your, how are you measuring it? How much, we have to make sure we don't double count. So it's a big task. And but we, after really carefully working on our database now for about the last 5 or 10 years and making sure that we know our local market, we're pretty confident. 50% waste diversion is no small thing, and great credit is due to the community. It's due to the folks in their households. It's due to the businesses. It's due to the institutions like Colorado State University. Poudre School District just does a fabulous job at waste diversion and recycling. So, we should pause and celebrate this moment, but at the same time in Fort Collins, people are saying, well, what's next? And so the council asked us to go out and find out what people wanted to do. We spent about the last 6 months doing outreach, having what we called community conversations. We had a great consulting firm to work with, and boy, we really, I won't say we didn't leave any rock unturned, but we really talked to a lot of people, and we got really great ideas as we went along. And what we kept hearing is that this community is ready to talk about a goal of zero waste, and just to embark on a really pretty ambitious approach. So there's some interim goals, but we're saying that by 2030 we'd get to near zero waste going into landfills from Fort Collins. So here's a very important piece of information, is that we throw away $6.5 million worth of commodities every year in Fort Collins. And we're not different from any other community around the country. This is just what goes into our trash. And so when you characterize it, there's sort of 12 categories they usually use. It adds up. If you take those different streams of material and assign a market value, and I'm going to go to item number 4, for instance, metals. Metals have a very strong market. If you've got scrap metal these days, go to your scrap metal buyback guy because he's going to pay you for it. Well, there's a lot of it that just sort of, dribs and drabs gets into our trash, and when you sort of add it all up, there's $500,000 nearly of metal that, is in high demand, that there are a good collection system for, and people are ready and willing to take it back from you. So that's just as an example, how if we change our way of thinking about our trash and think of it instead as commodities, then it really, I can see people nodding their heads, it's a little bit of a light switch going off. Well, out of this discussion, comes the inevitable, sort of issue about, well, we'd really like to do more composting, for instance, but it's hard in northern Colorado. We don't have very good commercial composting facilities available. And we ran into that over and over again in our discussions with people over the last 6 months, especially as expectations rise and people not only want to recycle their organics, their lawn trimmings and yard trimmings, but there's food scraps as well. And expectations are growing. I think people just sort of feel like it's time for the next generation of waste reduction and recycling to occur. And to do that, we're going to have to really push. We're going to have to push on finding ways to build the infrastructure that we need. So I mentioned composting facilities. Another one is construction and demolition debris. Kind of hard to sort out. There's a lot of it coming off of building sites, and it clogs up the landfill. Which is to say, people are working on it, but it would be easier if we had a facility where you could bring all that kind of combined debris, separate it out on a warehouse floor and a processing system for that. And then third idea here is a warehouse for reuse, because the typical hierarchy of reduce, reuse, recycle, you've heard it all your lives, I'm sure. On the reuse side of it, it's hard to figure out how to reuse something that maybe needs repair or maybe needs to go to a specialized processing site. So that's another idea that's come up. In this sort of bundle of new infrastructure facilities that we need, the city has identified a $12 to $17 million price tag. I mentioned that we're talking about commodities that we're throwing away. Well, it also creates jobs. If you take the trash and you process it instead to a market, for every job that for every ton of waste that we put in a landfill, it creates one job, and that same ton of trash can create 10 jobs in the recycling industry. It can create 20 jobs in the reuse industry. It can create, it just goes on. And you can imagine, that when you take and reprocess something and remanufacture it and resell it, that there are a lot of jobs involved. And greenhouse gas emissions is the other thing, because in Fort Collins, we have a very, the sort of umbrella issue for us is our greenhouse gas emissions and our climate action plan. And trash and waste and recycling are a really important part of that discussion. I'm going to flip through the recommendations that are coming out of this Road to Zero Waste because, well, we're kind of running out of time anyway. Universal recycling, we've heard over and over again. More people expect the opportunity to have access to recycling, not just if you live in a single-family home, but if you live in a multifamily home, or if you're a commercial. We mentioned bans. We might build on that idea of banning more materials in the future. We talked about C&D materials. It's a big issue, especially as development starts to ramp up again in northern Colorado. We talked about composting, reduce and reuse. Here's another one, waste to clean energy. Part of talking about a road to zero waste is that every idea ought to be on the table. And we're learning about new technology that after you've taken the recyclables out and after you've taken the compostables out, if in your trash stream there's still some embodied energy, then there's maybe some new technology for how to process that and create some alternative energy. We're talking about culture change. We're talking about radicalizing recycling. It's not just recycling anymore. It's really, going after every possible strategy. We talked about the local economy. This is good for the local economy. We talked about, well, we haven't talked about product stewardship, but all over Colorado, people are starting to look at charging a fee on disposable bags. That's an example of product stewardship. There's a bill pending in the legislature that will be looking at paint, and that you might go to your retailer and say, I've got some unused paint that I'd like you to take back in a certified take-back program. We need to talk about funding. because that's a perennial issue of how do we do our education outreach. And then regional cooperation, because we're part of a watershed. We are linked arms with Loveland and Larimer County. So I'm going to end on this note, because it's sort of thought-provoking. If you're not for zero waste, how much waste are you for? So thank you very much.
I could just come up here and say, okay, you guys are the best, Fort Collins, Loveland, Boulder, and I could just leave, and because really you guys are leading the way in the state of Colorado. And usually you guys are the examples that I provide to other communities for waste diversion. But still, when I think of northern Colorado, I do consider other counties in northern Colorado or other small towns that have a hard time getting or breaking through some of those barriers for recycling. And when it comes to the smaller communities especially, I think about some of these barriers, which the insufficient amount of recyclables to create a viable recycling program is a big one. And then you have the distance to recycling markets. If you don't have the commodity numbers that you need, then that distance is really prohibitive. And then there's a cost to recycle. If you're a hauler, you have to charge to, in some manner, to pick up those materials because you have a truck out on the road. You don't know what the market always looks like. You can't judge that a year out to know how much you're going to get for your recyclables. So it may be a nominal fee, but getting people to pay for recycling, they're going to pay one way or the other. And then a big thing that I think plays a big part in this region, well, especially for Fort Collins, is there's a really weak market for compost. When there's a weak market for compost, the ability to have a viable compost facility is just not, it's not going to happen in the area. So you lose that outlet for food waste or for other yard waste that, like the city of Loveland can actually collect that yard waste. The city of Fort Collins is having a hard time finding a way to divert those organics, which that's the next level for Fort Collins, is to collect those organics. And so I don't know how many people know about the Resource Recovery Economic Opportunity Grants, but it's a grant that's given out, or multiple grants given out every year. And one of the focus of those grants in recent years has been hub and spoke recycling, which really would benefit the rural communities. And then another focus has been in markets, which benefits Colorado as a whole, because some of those grants that have been given out to plastics manufacturers. So they can grind plastic, create a usable pellet in the state of Colorado, which makes, plastics a hard to recycle material a lot of the time. So that gives a local outlet that drops down that distance to the market. But the hub and spoke recycling grants that have been given out in the last few years, the state, or I guess there's a board that decides upon the grants, and they gave out recently one to Waste Management in Sterling, and Waste Management in Sterling is going to act as a hub so that smaller cities can have drop-offs and a closer location to drop those recyclables off. So that drops that distance down again for hauling the materials. But it also helps out because that Waste Management, they can get big enough loads to fill a semi-trailer and deliver those to market, or they deliver them down to Denver to their MRF there, and then they can sort those and put them on a train, and it just makes it more economically viable. Another good example is the city of Durango. They had received a grant a few years ago, and they're just it's kind of like Fort Collins drop-offs, I'm sure act as kind of a drop-off for other people coming into town that are out in Larimer County. That's the way Durango acts as well. A lot of people come in from Silverton or I guess Cortez possibly, and they drop off materials at that facility. And what that's done is it's kind of helped all the surrounding communities. And so you can see, this is a slide that I borrowed from my coworker, and basically you have your drop-offs in surrounding communities, and they need a place to easily drop those off that's low cost. So they go to the MRF or the most accessible location where they can bale those materials, get a big enough load, and then send that out to market. And so one of the barriers, and this is a facility that I can show you here. Grand Junction. It's Grand Junction Curbside Recycling Indefinitely. They started a small recycling program as a curbside pickup, and they charge a monthly fee. It's, I think, $2 a month, and they, depending on where you are, you get 1 or 2 pickups a month. And they actually have 4 bins that they have people sort their materials out on the sidewalk. There's guys that walk along the truck, put them in there, different containers, and they have extremely low contamination rates because of the way that they collect that material. They also, because of the low contamination rates, they're able to market those materials to specific manufacturers in the United States. And even though it's still environmentally beneficial to send things to China, the guy who runs this program is adamant about keeping things in the US, and he has markets for plastics in Utah, which is really close to him. You know, he can send glass to Coors. He can send other recyclables to other MRFs that can handle those materials, and he gets a top dollar for that. So he's overcoming some of those barriers with the way he's designed his program. Sorry, MRF is a material recovery facility. It's that place, that magic place where trucks dump off a bunch of different materials, and then they have people and machines sort those materials into different bales. So you have your aluminum can bale in and your plastic bottles, and so that's a MRF, sorry. And the great thing about this program, and I've seen it in other states that I've been to, recycling doesn't have to be that waste management MRF, that beautiful multi-stream, conveyor belts and hundreds of people sorting materials. It can be a guy that got a conveyor belt from a local food processor, set it up so people just unload things, and they unload them in different, by material types, pull out the contaminants, and then they have a guy up here that just basically directs the materials to the different sorting bins. When one of these bins is full, they open this door, here's a conveyor belt, and it goes to a baler, and then they shove that baler out, get it out with the forklift, and then they store the material. This is actually at an old wastewater treatment plant, so they have the old clarifiers that they've kind of cut a door in. They store the materials in the old walled buildings, or I guess clarifiers, and cover them, and then they can have enough, store the material until they have enough to go to market. They actually received a grant from the RREO, program to build this building and to buy a baler, and that actually helped them increase their capacity from 3.5 million pounds a year to 9 million pounds a year. And it's all cardboard. Cardboard's the easiest to recycle, especially when you look at commercial accounts. And that's truly a successful program, in my opinion. And the next thing I want to talk about, and Susie touched on this, is jobs. This is a study that was done by the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, and it shows that when you send materials to a recovery facility, you create 10 jobs per 10,000 tons. Composting, you create 4 per 10,000 tons, and in a landfill, you create 1. Now, I don't know, I took a conservative view of these numbers, so I thought I would do my own calculation, and I looked at all the landfills in the northeast part of Colorado from here east, and we disposed of about 1.3 million tons of material in those landfills. And I took that number, and I said, what does the EPA say is left over after recycling? So let's say we took everything out for recycling, and so the EPA says we had 30% of material is either food or yard waste after recycling and diversion already occurs. And so I said, well, let's just cut that in half, just to be conservative. Then they also say that 46% could still be recycled. So I cut that in half, just to be conservative. So it says, we had 200,000 tons food and yard waste that could be composted or created into mulch or something along those lines. And then another 300,000 tons of recyclables were sent to landfills. And so I said, well, let's have that again just to be extra conservative. And there were at least 25 job opportunities that were lost in 2012 alone, just in those, I think, 5 counties. So 25 jobs is a big deal, especially when a couple of those are managers. Then some others, you have some people that are sorting, It's those people that need to get paid $12 an hour that need jobs as bad as anyone else. So that was just a quick discussion on recycling. As my information at the top, Wolf Cray also works on recycling for the state of Colorado. Contact him as well if you have any questions. And I can answer any questions for anyone.
There's more examples from like the EU and Canada where they're taking that approach of looking at what it is that's coming into our communities, and how do we exert some control over that. It sort of falls under the general category of extended producer responsibility. Or another concept is product stewardship, which I mentioned earlier. It's hard for a local community to do something, on its own. Let's say just pass an ordinance, for instance, on packaging. Not that it couldn't happen, where we maybe go to the big box retailers and say, you're selling us these appliances or electronics, and it comes in an enormous amount of styrofoam. That's what we hear from people a lot, is like, why can't we recycle styrofoam? And so you end up, whether you like it or not, with a bunch of styrofoam that takes up a bunch of room in your trash can that you end up paying for. And so people, I don't know if they would support that idea that we'd say, well, the retailers have to have some sort of program to take that back from their customers, or whether we would sort of urge the businesses to do it on a voluntary basis. Is that sort of going in the direction you're? I think what we are trying to do as a recycling industry is push back a little bit and say, look, if you're selling us something like a blister pack around a packet, there's nobody that we know of that will take that material from us. We can probably handle some of the film plastics, like Tyler was mentioning, plastic bags and stuff. We can find a market for that. But some of these things, it's just, if we push back and say, you've got to redesign your packaging and help us out. So it's almost like we need a sort of two-way communication a little bit with the manufacturing industry to talk about packaging and design. Another example that I think we are making some inroads on is with electronics, and the idea that, it used to be you got a computer, and the only way you could take it apart was with a sledgehammer. If they instead put it together with Phillips screws, then somebody on in a workshop, in a recovery or a refurbishing shop can take it apart and disassemble it and fix the parts. So those are just some of the concepts. It's a little harder to accomplish at the local level than it would be at the state level. Or at the national level. I mean, again, we see examples in the EU and in Canada that we're all watching closely to get good ideas and to see what would work in this country. We're not exactly known for passing that kind of, really strong, aggressive legislation. We've got somebody here in the audience. Margie Greek is here from the Colorado Association. Margie, do you have any suggestions? I know you're working on some of these ideas.
I'll just sort of hang out up here for a second. Thanks. Hi, Margie Greek, Colorado Association for Recycling. It is a great question, and it is one of the things that we are trying to look at and resolve here in the United States. One of the things that I know communities do that they can do as a community, as a government, is to institute environmentally preferable purchasing programs. We're seeing it, a lot of interest from City and County of Denver, City of Fort Collins, the state of Colorado, some of the school districts, and many local communities have these programs in place to try and look at what they're purchasing as a community and try and ensure it's as green as possible. So that, for example, paper is 30, 50, 100% recycled paper may be made in a factory where they use wind power as opposed to coal. So there's electronics that have what they call EPEAT standards, which are much more environmentally friendly than some of the other electronics that you can buy. So putting those types of things in place it not only impacts the environment by that purchasing, but it also impacts it sort of down the road a bit, because as Susie was saying, as companies start to hear from their consumers what it is that they want to purchase, they start to build to that. So it's sort of a design for the environment program where if people are saying, we want green products, we want chemicals that have fewer toxics in them, or cleaning products that have fewer toxics in them, then they start to create those and they start to manufacture those so that they are available for purchase. But it takes a lot to sort of turn that ship and make the manufacturers move in that direction. And the other thing that Susie had mentioned is product stewardship, where there are programs for electronics, for paint, for mercury, for all kinds of things that the manufacturers now are saying, okay, we created this, we're responsible for it at end of life. And that really makes them think about what goes into those products, because when they have to pay for the disposal and handling at end of life, they really make a big change.
Well, I was just going to say really quick, the guy that I work with, Wolf Cray, actually looks at most of that data. And it's really hard to track. He did put together a waste flow chart at one point showing where, you know, the majority of recyclables were going, and there's a big arrow that goes down to Los Angeles, and that, I mean, it's a huge export. You know, we don't manufacture that much in the U.S. anymore, so the recyclables are going to go where manufacturing occurs. There's still, until recently, there were a lot of markets for paper or in the U.S. or cardboard and paperboard, but some of those plants have shut down. So,
Do we have time for me to add a comment to that, Caroline? The issue of going to China it's a phenomenon that's happened over like about the last 10 years, and we've grown really dependent on it because they would offer, you know, they were a steady clientele, they paid good money, and so it was a giant sucking sound. And a lot of the mills in the U.S. closed down because they just couldn't compete with the price that China was offering for materials. But a very interesting thing has happened in the last year or two with recycling, and you might have caught this. We use the word contamination a lot. If something's in the recycling bin that's not appropriate or trash, you know, it's just the wrong material in there, we refer to as contamination or residue level. And increasingly, China has been very unhappy with the quality of materials that are coming to them, not just from the U.S., but from Europe. And they recently embargoed us. They put up, and it's being called the green fence, and they just totally clamped down on imports from the U.S., which has put the recycling industry into a real tailspin, because now people are sitting on a lot of materials that they normally would have shipped to China. Two things will come out of it, I hope. I hope that more people will realize we need to invest in the mills in this country and put our citizens to work. And then the second thing is that the message will, and this is our job at the community level, is to help people understand it's really, really important for the materials to be clean and free of foreign material, you know, debris and contamination. Because when it comes time to get to the mill, whether it's a paper manufacturer or a plastics remanufacturer, they can just really only deal with a certain level of contamination before they reject the load, and they just say we can't deal with this. We don't have the manpower to sort through it and clean it up. So that's our job, and it's our job here in the communities and in our businesses is to really follow the guidelines carefully and really understand how it works from a market perspective.
Two things I kind of wanted to bring in on this. Going back to my presentation on Recycle Bank, one of the thoughts is, and I hope this doesn't happen, but if people get points for recycling, what's stopping them from throwing a concrete block in their recycling container? And that just talking about contamination. So those are the sort of things that we have to educate the public on. The other thing is there's this well-known fact, I guess, that I've heard from people that are not in the business, and it's not a fact, is well, the cities collect all this material and you guys get paid for it, and there is a cost for all this, especially when the markets go down, especially with this green fence that's been put up. The city of Loveland deals a lot with waste management. I mean, they've got our contract for taking our materials, and they've shut us down on a lot of the materials that they take because they don't have a market anymore. China said no more. So. Well, they are, but I think that's where the green fences kind of come up with the new, I don't want to say president of China, but his wife was kind of put in charge of this green fence, or that was her initiative. And I think that's where she has kind of said, they may be responsible, but I think that's where they're trying to pull the reins back a little bit and say, we've got to clean this up. They've been everybody's dumping ground for a really long time on junk, contaminated plastics. And it's been great for us in a way because we've always got somewhere to send our stuff. Well, they're saying no more to it now. Correct.
Well, if you buy you think you're getting a ton of plastic and 20% of it is weird stuff like diapers and hypodermic needles, and I'm not kidding you, that's what they were seeing coming in. At some point, they're just losing money. I mean, they just are either going to stop paying as well or stop paying at all, for this material.
Well, it's a fantastic conversation and fascinating topic. I really apologize that I have to cut us off, but we have reached our time. Thank you immensely to our panelists and our guest panelist, Margie. If you have any additional questions, I'm sure our panelists are happy to answer them during the break time here, but we want to make sure you have a break before the next session. Just a little plug for the next session right here. We're going to be talking about some of the nuts and bolts of developing a zero waste program at your business or in your own life in our next session here. So thank you very much for coming.